Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, we're back here on the Chase Thomas podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. Joining me, first timer on this very program, WVLT's own John Sartori. John, good evening, sir. How are you?
Good, Chase. Thanks for having me, man.
Thank you for being here. What was it like having a night off here, not having to be the game in person?
You know what? And it's like we talked about it a little bit. It's hard to keep track with the SEC schedule this year.
Yes.
Last week we had a Wednesday night. This is the first Tuesday night, and I think we're going till Tuesday the rest of the year for the most part. So yeah, it's weird watching from home. It's a little different tonight, but we'll take it.
What do you prefer?
Outside tonight, it's miserable.
What do you prefer?
Oh, dude, I'd rather be there, and I'm not just saying that. I'd rather be there for sure. There's nothing like it,
It's loud, though. Friend of the pod, Ryan Shumpert, talks about the volume here. So the volume is an issue.
I was talking with someone right before the game just about how loud it is. And I don't know. We're on the floor. Ryan and the writers are kind of in the stands with everybody else.
Yeah.
I don't really notice that it's that loud. But, whenever I read his tweets, I'm like, okay, yeah, it is really loud down here. I don't know. Yeah. I don't realize it till then. But, yeah. It is definitely loud. That's for sure.
I can't do it, man. So you're not doing earplugs or anything.
I'm not. Maybe as the years progress, I'm still kind of young. Still, the doctors aren't telling me I got to put them in yet. So maybe that'll change. But as of right now, we're going. We're letting the volume go as it wants to, just entering the ear canal and doing what it may.
There you go. What do you see? Because I've never been in your spot in the way you cover games. What do you see that's different than that fans don't see on TV or even in the crowd based on your angles?
Yeah, I've covered games this year from both where the writers sit, so basically a fan seat, and down on the floor. The biggest thing is in the second half, you're by the Tennessee bench, and that's the real difference. Is you get to see what Rick Barnes is doing all the time, which he's working refs like crazy and he's talking to his assistants like crazy. That's really the only difference I feel like in terms of being on the floor. The only difference is that it's cool, you're on the floor, but in terms of taking in the game and from an X's and O's type deal, you're not really getting much different. Also, I'm curious if a writer were to ever sit on the floor. You kind of get that NCAA tournament time where you're at a scorer's table. When you're filming, you aren't able to see what's going on in a play anyway because you're following the ball. So especially in football, you don't know that a guy's running a post until he's got the ball. So yeah, there's not a huge difference there in terms of, I'm sitting on the floor versus I'm sitting in the stands.
Oh, that's why the end zone seating is for the real ball knowers, capital B, capital K. You don't want to be on the 50, 40, any of that. You want to be in the end zone because you could see guys running open. The year with Jalen Hyatt was fantastic sitting in the end zone. But I was in the end zone for Jalen Wright breaking through against Georgia 2 years ago. Yeah, that was the loudest Neyland's ever been, and that was right at the middle, and you just see the C's part for Jalen, and you're just apoplectic. You're just I think I'm just gonna pass out here in the crowd. But it was fantastic. I'm so glad I was there.
Pass out for a completely different reason because we were filming Tennessee running through the tee. But it's so loud that you don't know which way the team is kicking off and who's receiving on which end. So anyway, by the time we found out that Tennessee was going to that direction, we were starting to walk that way. Well, all you're doing is praying that the first play is not a touchdown.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't filming it. I was still walking. So I was about to pass out just out of the sheer dread that I just missed what could have possibly been one of the biggest plays in Tennessee history. Unfortunately, it wound up not being.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why I was about to pass out because I'm looking up at the Jumbotron just gosh, please somebody catch him. Please somebody catch him so I can get them running into the end zone. So yeah, that actually happened to me twice that year. That happened to me UConn and Georgia with Jalen Wright breaking runs on the first play of the game.
Jalen Wright, man, he was special, man. He
home run hitter.
He was a home run. And I'd still tell people, Samson and him are very different, but I think Jalen was the best fit for a hypo offense. And I think Samson was just more by necessity of terms of just what the offense was, what it was capable of this season, and what I guess really more of the limitations. But Jalen Wright's kind of what you want in a Heupel offense, just that kind of the heavy hitter who can just take advantage of those light boxes, get to the second level, and he's just gone. Like Jalen Wright is, I would still say, is the most talented back that Heupel's had in the last 4 years. And I understand the numbers this year with Samson's a little bit different, but the home run hitter aspect to Jalen, just it's a different kind of dimension. It puts different kind of fear in opposing defenses.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you saw it a little bit with Deshaun Bishop. Not that he's the same talent as Jalen Wright. We'll wind up seeing what happens in his career, but like you saw it in the Kent State game. You saw it at multiple times. Like Chattanooga stands out a little bit. I think the play I'm thinking of, he was actually tackled. He was tripped up at like the 10.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, there's a need for it in the offense, obviously, like a home run hitter. We'll see what we have next year.
So final thing on just not actual what we just saw tonight, because we're taping this right after Mississippi State, Tennessee here. I need you to answer this once and for all, John. So you saw Tennessee fans after this game. People were leaving early tonight as Tennessee coasted to a victory over the Bulldogs. But there is a huge discussion, disagreement among Vol Nation in terms of the kind of home environment and what the crowd is actually like for TBA.
Yeah.
What do you see? Because you're up there, you're in it. You're at home. Like, is this a great home atmosphere? Is this, because you've been to a lot of different venues, is it one of the best in the SEC? Is it kind of overrated? Is it underrated? What is actually true about the atmosphere, in-game atmosphere of TBA?
I don't think there's a bad home environment in the SEC. I think now that everybody's good, I think everybody's got a good home environment. I think when it's a big game, Tennessee has a great home environment. I look back to Auburn last year. Illinois last year was great. Arkansas this year was great. And I think as you get into the Kentucky game, that's going to be great. Look, people want to support a winner. That's why there's a million Tennessee podcasts right now that are trying to compete with you. Everyone loves talking.
I don't know what you're talking about. This is the one and only Tennessee Volunteers podcast. I don't know what you're talking about, but yeah.
So I think it's great. As someone who went to a small school, I went to Southeastern Louisiana, so I wasn't like covering SEC basketball. Kentucky last year being in Rupp Arena was crazy. I mean, it was just unreal. So look, I think Tennessee's got a great home atmosphere when they sell it out, and they've obviously got a ton of sellouts coming up. So I personally, if I had to answer it, I think it is objectively a great arena, because when that crowd gets into it, like we saw with Zakai going off against Georgia in the second half, when they get into it, they all get into it, just like they do in Neyland. Like there's no, I think anyone could tell you there was a stark difference in the crowd for the Alabama game as opposed to the Kent State game. Just like there's going to be a difference in the Georgia game versus the Norfolk State game. You know, when it's a big game, Vol Nation is going to show out, and I expect it to do the same once we get into February and March. So I think it's a great atmosphere.
I love it. Well, speaking of the atmosphere in the game itself tonight, Tennessee coasts to a victory over Mississippi State tonight. Good bounce back win following what happened in Nashville on Saturday night. John, what was your immediate takeaway of Tennessee winning here tonight over Mississippi State?
I loved what I saw from Jemai Mashak. I think, and I was saying it during the game, at some point, Jemai's got to make defenses guard him. And I think he did that tonight, puts up a couple of threes. A couple of them go in. He gets the nice roll. And then, I mean, that corner three he made was one of the most confident shots he's taken all year, maybe in the last 2 years. Igor Milicic, you'd like to see him be a little more aggressive, because when he is, he's dang near unstoppable. And then the defense, look, at some point, you are what you are. I don't know how much longer you have to try to be something you're not. But the one thing that you know that Tennessee is going to be, and they were tonight, is a dominant defensive team. They may not always have the stats to back that up, but they're going to have the effort to do so. And we saw it in the first half. The concern is, and we saw it to start the second half, and we saw it in Nashville in the first half. This team, when they are stagnant offensively, they are a completely different offensive team. There's a lot of standing around. There's not a lot of movement. And it's weird how much there's a shift, because they go from being this team that's running, do-si-dos on offense like we saw with Jordan and Zakai, to a team that's standing around and watching the basketball. And so I think that's the concerning part of tonight, is there was that aspect at the start of the second half. But what is promising, and this is what I say, there's a lot of people who say, oh, this isn't a national championship team. The beauty in that is you don't have to be that right now. You have to be it for the 6 games in March. Can you be better than the 6 teams you play in March? I take Tennessee, just like I would Auburn, as one of the favorites to win a 6-game stretch in March. So I like this team a lot. I like them a little bit more offensively at this point than I did last year, just because it was at times just Dalton, it felt like. This team, when they're firing on all cylinders, you've got a much better offensive player in Zakai Ziegler than you had last year. If Jahmai can get his shot going, you've got a better Jahmai Mayshak than you had last year. Igor, Felix is there down low. And then Jordan Gainey from mid-range, I think, is extremely underrated. And you know that he can knock down some threes for you as well. So I like what I saw from this team tonight. I think it's a microcosm of what this team really is. It's a fantastic defensive team. And when their shots are falling, they can be a very, very good offensive team.
Yeah, and it just feels like to me that Igor is kind of that final guy to unlock stuff for this team. Because, I mean, he had a rough night tonight, and that's the stuff in the half court when you're talking about like it gets a little stagnant, it gets a little like guys standing around. Like if you can figure out how to unlock Igor, because he is your Swiss Army knife kind of guy, and you could do so much with him. We saw what he did at Charlotte before coming over, and we've seen little things like top of the key. He's comfortable from 3. Like it's one of those in the Tennessee Vols group chat we were in. Like it's one of those where you're like, I kind of need to be at all these games so I can just like yell at Igor every time he catches anything in the perimeter, because he is a good shooter. It just sometimes feels like he's very passive. He's not confident enough in his abilities, because he actually is really good. Like Igor is just someone I'm like, Igor, you got to shoot that, or Igor, you've got to do some other stuff here, because you do have that kind of talent. I mean, Felix Akpara, I think, is just kind of the under talked about great player for the Vols over the last 2 weeks. Like he's been great, and he had another great night tonight, especially on the boards. But you need Igor to start shooting more. Like that's just part of it. It's like it can't, like Chaz is going to get his. I think he's going to be fine, as you saw tonight. Like he's going to continue to get his shots up and make a pretty solid amount of threes. But you're going to need Igor to attack. You're going to need Igor to do stuff off the dribble when things break down. It just feels like he is the guy, because it's not going to be Mayshak. It's Zakai is going to be driving and dishing. That's not going to be Zakai. Like Chaz Lanier is not a driver. He's going to catch stuff off pin downs and everything else. And Felix Akpara is definitely not going to be that guy. So it's got to be Igor. Like Igor is the one who you brought in to kind of be that multi-dimensional big. And I don't think he's confident enough right now. And it's not plaguing Tennessee in a horrible way, but it is something that I'm kind of waiting for him to block, because I know he can do it. It's just he's not doing it right now.
It's been really weird, because like you see it at times, like you see it in the dunk he had late against Georgia, where he just puts his foot in the ground and goes. But then there was a moment tonight, Mississippi State was pressing late. He catches it at half court and kind of stands around for a couple of seconds. There's just that, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think anyone but Igor knows why that is right now. You don't need to figure it out yet. You need to figure it out over the next month before SEC tournament. Hopefully that happens. But yeah, I think the missing link is a good way to describe it. He's also such an intriguing player from a fan perspective, because he's done nothing to aggravate anyone. Like most of the time from a fan base, when you're asking a player, it's please stop shooting. And everyone's asking Igor to shoot more. So that's interesting as well. Like you said, he can do it. He shot nearly 40% from 3 at Charlotte. When he takes threes here, he makes a good amount of them.
He needs D-Stone's confidence.
Yeah. He needs
like D-Stone got 4 shots up in like 3 minutes in the first half. And look, second half wasn't great from him, but like he understands that you have to get shots up. Like D-Stone, like he shot 40% at Hofstra for the last 2 years. Like, hey, I'm okay with him attacking and doing what he needs to do, because that's what he needs to do off the bench. Igor's got to have that same mentality.
I'm interested what D-Stone's role becomes, because it's almost like they can't find the exact one that works for him. He's a huge body, and I wonder, you put him at a stretch 3 and do you post him up? I mean, because he's smaller than a power forward, but he's bigger than a guard, and where is his sweet spot in this offense is the question. I think that's going to be intriguing to see as the season progresses as well.
And then I love just Cade is like an absurd rebounder. Like Cade makes no sense. Like it's just his size and everything else, but he's just so good. Offensive boards, defensive boards. Like he did a lot early on in this game. And then I think we haven't talked about him, but I mean, it's Gainey, especially at home. Like Gainey is someone like I thought it was kind of strange early in the second half. I just jotted down. I'm like, why is Gainey not in early when Mississippi State got this run going? Because he's just such a fluid shooter and helps this offense so much in the half court when things get a little stagnant. Because I think Gainey is one of your 5 best players this year. And I don't know where he fits in that final 5, but Gainey he's just developed. Like he came off so many curls tonight and he's just comfortable. He didn't make a 3 in this game, but he's still getting them up. They're still good looks. They've talked about all the size that he's added from last year to this year, but he's just a comfortable player and knows exactly what he is on offense and someone who just helps so much when things get stagnant. I don't know. I think Gainey is just another one where you're like, man, he's just getting better and better, and it's just when he's not getting phantom fouls called on him, when he's getting hit in the face and getting fouls on him, he's pretty good, man.
It's so interesting because I think that Jordan Gainey is getting this. He's basically the same looks that he got all last year that he couldn't seem to knock down. And this year he's added the mid-range jumper. He's knocking down the threes he was missing last year, and he can also get to the rim because of the size that he added. He's really what you hope to see as you progress year by year. And he's that interesting mid-major transfer who doesn't come in, who you don't bring in to contribute right away. I'm sure Tennessee wanted more from him last year, but this is really what you thought you were getting from USC Upstate is this version of Jordan Gainey. So that's been really cool to see because he's a really good kid. Obviously, Justin, his dad is there as well. So it's been really cool to just see him not lose confidence in who he is. And now to see that, translate into the success he's having this year.
Final hoops thing. How do you think Auburn goes on Saturday based on what you've seen from Auburn and Tennessee to this point? Does Tennessee match up okay? The non-broom factor help Tennessee's chances obviously a little bit, but what do you think Tennessee's at going into Auburn on Saturday?
I think they're a different team on the road than they are at home. That's for sure. There's something about shooting in TBA that team loves, and especially shooting in the second half. When they're shooting near their bench, feels like every game there's a stretch where they're going 6 or 7 shots without a miss. And we saw that again tonight. Definitely a different team on the road than they are at home. I think that works to their disadvantage. Look, if Tennessee...
Are we talking about football or basketball?
I know it sounds like the same thing, but look, if this is a huge opportunity for Tennessee. I think if they lose this game, you're not going to look at them. You're not going to say that they're in any worse position. I think they're kind of playing with house money coming into this game. This is a huge opportunity to defeat the number 1 team in the nation on the road. Huge resume builder to try to get a 1 seed. If you lose, I don't see them dropping unless we see like a just something huge out of the 7 through 10 teams. So I think you're kind of playing with house money here. It's also interesting how late the game is. I'm curious if that plays a factor at all. It's an 8:30 game, which is wild. So look, I think Tennessee is capable of beating anyone. I think any of the teams in the top 10 are, just like Auburn is. So kind of house money. If they win, wonderful. That tells you a lot about this team. If they lose, I think they're the same team that they're going to be. I think they're still a Final Four contender. Doesn't change much, but we'll find out what they need to work on. It's going to be a good look in the mirror for Tennessee.
Well, I think it's like it puts you back in the driver's seat for a 1 seed if you take care of business.
Absolutely.
Like, because you're outside looking in now with the Vanderbilt loss. Like the Vanderbilt loss might loom large of like the reason, kind of like the Arkansas game for Tennessee football, where it's like you that's 1 game too many from going 1 seed to 2 seed, and we just know the history in the tournament, like how much more valuable a 1 seed is than a 2 seed. You've never been a 1 seed in school history. Like I'm just gonna be completely transparent here, John. I'm gonna be annoyed at Rick Barnes for sitting Zakai for 7 minutes and 40 seconds at the end of the first half for a while, especially the answer afterwards where I'm like, that's not, no, we're not doing, like, if we don't foul on the 3 at the end there with Meshack, then we're okay and everyone's happy. It's like, well, no, because you could have been building on that lead. Like you're assuming that things would have, and Zakai obviously finishing with, he had 2 fouls with 40 seconds to go in the second half. It's like, I think Zakai could have stayed in, point being. But I do think it's something where you get it back. Like if you can win and steal this game at Auburn and you still are able, because I think you're going to have to keep it to 5 losses or less in SEC play if you're on a 1 seed. So a lot of tough games. You still have to go to Kentucky. You still have Bam
Mhm.
on the schedule. You still have some other big time matchups. If you can steal this one back, it makes that Vanderbilt loss sting a whole lot less, and I think it does put you back in the driver's seat for the 1 seed, which is huge. Like that's what you're doing. That's what the march
I
is
think
right
it's
now.
similar. I think it's similar to college football. I think the Vanderbilt loss, if it came at a good time
Hmm.
because there's so much basketball left. If Tennessee handles its business the way that you would expect them to, if you can split take 2 or 3 from the
Hmm.
Auburn, Alabama, Kentucky stretch, I
Hmm.
think it's going to be one of these games that people wind up forgetting about, honestly, because it happens so early in the SEC schedule. And look, you win this game against Auburn, you're back in the top 3, probably in the AP poll. You're certainly back in the top 5. Look, it's a huge opportunity, obviously. But again, you're kind of playing with house money because Auburn is a consensus number 1 team. No one is going to scoff at Tennessee losing on the road at Auburn. So big opportunity for the Vols Saturday, obviously. And, if you win, that's great. If you lose, you move on with it.
I love it. Speaking of moving on, there was a player who moved on from Duke here in the transfer portal. John, you've reported on him this week. Star Thomas enters the fold. Look, I'm not going to be the guy like Star Thomas, Chase Thomas. I don't know which way folks want to go in terms of Tennessee right now, but both cool names in their own right. One's a verb, one's one's if you're into astronomy, that works too.
Yeah.
But Star Thomas is a intriguing depth piece at the very least. But what do you make of Star Thomas entering the fold here for the Vols?
Well, first of all, you're getting an extremely experienced guy who was already a grad student at Duke, and now he's still a grad student at Tennessee, which is crazy. He gets the JUCO thing. Look, you got a young running back room. You've got Deshaun Bishop. You've got Peyton Lewis, who are both going into their second year in the program. Those were your veterans, and now you're getting a guy who's seen a ton of football. He's been in JUCO. He's been in the FBS now at 2 different stops. He's been at a Power 4, and now he's coming to Tennessee. And this is a business trip for him. This is an opportunity to boost his NFL stock and to continue playing football. So this is a kid who's going to come in determined. He comes from a small town in Louisiana. He's had to earn everything that's been handed to him. The school that he went to has produced, I think, 3 FBS players ever, and he's one of them. So this is a kid who's going to come in. He's huge, first of all. He's larger than most running backs are. He does great stuff in the pass game. I think he'll add a lot in the pass protection game as well. The question is, what does the balance look like? You probably have more of a balance than you had last year with Dylan Sampson getting, the majority of the carries. Do you see more of what we saw with Jalen Wright, Jabari Small, and Dylan Sampson? I think that's what the running back room looks like. But look, I think this could be a potential diamond in the rough scenario for Tennessee. This is a guy who was outside the top 30 running backs available in the portal, but he had a really good year at Duke last year, and he's coming in with a ton of experience and a ton of motivation to play well, because if he plays well, he's going to get to continue playing football at the next level.
And like you said, I don't think this is going to be a just one like Peyton Lewis show in 2025. I think there is reason for optimism about Peyton Lewis. I think he's going to be a good player here, but to your point, I just think it's going to be more of a combination. And DeJuan Morris coming in, true freshman, like I think he is a different kind of back, so he has a possibility of getting some snaps in there. I wouldn't rule it out.
For sure.
Dylan Sampson got some snaps as a true freshman in 2022, and part of his issue was I remember the Hendon Hooker block hit at LSU actually, where he didn't pick up the block and Hooker got blasted, and that was the last we saw of Sampson for a while. Pass blocking's huge, so Star Thomas being really good in that department, and like you said, being a grad student, being a grown man back there, my gut is Star Thomas is going to play a lot.
I'm pretty sure he's going to be 26. I don't know that. I mean, let me see when he was born, but he graduated. He graduated high school in 2020.
Okay.
So let me see. Give me 1 second. because now I'm curious. So Star Thomas was born on. Oh, they don't have his birthday listed. But look, the kid graduated high school in 2020. So he's been in college football. This will be his 6th year. I mean, So 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. I don't know. I'm from Louisiana. We're not really good at the math. But look, all that aside, he's a grown man. He's without a doubt the elder statesman of that running back room that Tennessee certainly needed. So I think you not only get a talented player, you get much needed veteran leadership in that room that Tennessee would not have had if they did not have him. So I think that that's another huge asset there in this pickup.
Yeah, and I think you kind of had to, right? Like Samson gone, like there's just it's kind of the most uncertain Tennessee's running back room's been since Heupel first got there. Because I mean, this is kind of that Tion Evans edition, right? Where Tion was awesome in 2021 until he departed at the end of the season, and but he was really good, especially at Mizzou early on. It was. I think you're going to see more of that rotation, but also Deshaun Bishop has not been able to stay healthy the last 2 years at Tennessee. Peyton Lewis obviously came in banged up. He was banged up a little bit last year. Like I don't think there's any way around Star Thomas, Peyton Lewis, and Deshaun Bishop not rotating and Twan Morris not playing some, just with the injury history and where Tennessee's at running back. But I think it was, by all accounts, and by just where Tennessee was and how late in the cycle they were, to add somebody like Thomas, I think is a good add for them.
The timing of it certainly is. It's really strong this late. All right, so Star Thomas, sorry, I've been locked in on figuring out how old he is. He's only 23. Again, terrible math on my end. He'll be 24 during next football season.
Hendon Hooker's age.
Not even close to 26. So absolutely false reporting on my end. He'll be 24.
It's okay. It's okay. Look, are we really that much different at 26 versus 24? Who's to say? But what do you think, though? Speaking of portal here, John, like, what is your perspective on the quiet portal window thus far for Tennessee? Are you surprised that it's been relatively quiet in terms of how many they've added, based on what you saw this past year? What do you think of it?
Initially, yes, and then you take a step back and you understand that this team is coming off a college football playoff, and the people who are in that building know way more about their roster than I do. And the people who are in that building know way more about the players they have inside that building than I do. And they know what they need, and they'll get what they need, and they'll go out and it's their jobs. Like any of us in our jobs, like you're going to do what you have to, if you care about your job, you're going to do what you have to do that job well. Like this idea that, they're not attacking the portal hard enough. Look, they're doing the best they can with what they got. And at the end of the day, would you like to see every 5-star in the portal come to Tennessee? Sure. That'd be really cool. If you're an Ohio State fan, that'd be really cool. Like, no one is getting every single player out of the portal that you wish. And I saw a meme, I think it was from a guy on CBS. Players in the portal are so much better than players who aren't in the portal. As soon as a guy goes into the portal, oh my gosh, this guy's great. And as soon as he commits to your school, he's fantastic. I don't care what he did at the other place. He's fantastic. So am I surprised there's not more activity? Maybe. But at the end of the day, Josh Heupel and that staff know those players and what they have way more than any of us do. So for me to sit here and say, I think they need more, I don't know. We'll see what happens in the fall, because they're going to be a top 15 team in the preseason, and they're going to be a very popular pick to go back to the playoff, which should not be taken for granted. It's really hard to get there. Alabama knows how hard it is to get there, and they just dominated college football for 20 years. So we'll see. We'll see in the fall, and we'll let the cards fall where they may. Doesn't matter what I say. The portal's what it is. It doesn't matter if I say they need to add more or not. They'll have what they have, and I think they'll still have a really, really talented roster.
Absolutely. And I wrote about it today over at sportsrenaissanceman.com. It's just that I think what's interesting about this year, because I think it's just, and I want to get your perspective on this, John, is I think this is a big eval year on offense, because there's no way around you. Like, they've been able to skirt with Pruitt guys and transfer guys on offense. Like defense, they're developing. Like defense, they're blue chippers that they are bringing in. They're rotating, and they're players now. Linebacker, corner, at star with Boo Carter, all across the defensive line. Like, they are developing, they're identifying, and this is a top 10 defense. And I think the Tennessee defense is going to be somewhere around the top 10 next year. I think a lot of people are going to predict the drop off with Pierce, but I think they're going to be just fine with Joshua Josephs and Jordan Ross and Caleb Harris. Like, it's just, they're going to be more than okay. I'm not going to doubt Rodney Garner in that room. I will say, though, on the offensive line, they've never been without Cooper Mace. They've never been without Javonte Spraggins. They are going to potentially start a true freshman right tackle in David Sanders, who you have a big investment in. A very different running back room, obviously. The receivers are all guys that you brought in outside of Chris Brazzell. These are all internal guys. And you can even throw in Amari Jefferson, who, quote unquote, is a transfer, didn't play at all last year, and he was down to Tennessee, Bama. And he's basically, I look at him as just a recruit, like a late recruit.
Yeah.
These are all your eval guys. Nico, eval guy. Like, they all have to take a step. And it's going to be interesting. Satterwhite or Max Anderson at center. Like, I have no idea what life looks like after Cooper Mace at center.
Yeah. And
these are all eval guys. Like, this is a humongous eval year for the offense.
You wonder how different the 2023 season is with Cooper Mace healthy the entirety of it. Like, that team looked completely different without Cooper
Especially
Mace.
At Florida.
Yes. That's the one that really stood out. Because you halfway through that game, you're just like, if Cooper Mace was in this game, it's a completely different game.
And it wasn't Ollie's fault. Like, Ollie was a great left guard all year, but he was thrown into that spot because you didn't have a backup for Cooper. Like, that was part of it. Like, you didn't have anybody.
It could be a blessing and a curse starting the year with Syracuse. Not that I think Syracuse is a playoff team, but Syracuse is certainly going to go to a bowl. Syracuse is certainly a better opponent than NC State was. You may get exposed a bit at times, not saying they'll lose the game, but it's better than starting off with Syracuse than vice versa. You get ETSU and then, and look, ETSU is a really good team, but Chattanooga was a good team too in the FCS. They almost made the playoffs, and you went out and had one of your best offensive performances of the season against them. So I think that that's a great time to see really what you have. I think you'll find out a lot about that team, in Atlanta against Syracuse. Can the receivers get separation? That's it. Can Mike Matthews live up to the hype? I certainly think he can. When he was on the field last year, he was sensational. He was one of the most fun players to watch on the field last year. Chris Brazzell showed it at times. There was one play against Chattanooga where he caught a touchdown out of bounds. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, oh my gosh, this kid is going to be special. And then you waited around all year, waiting to see that again. So potential through the roof. I think Tennessee's got an extremely talented roster. They'll bring in talented guys, and they'll place them where they need to. The question will be the execution of that, and we'll find out in Atlanta, and then go from there.
Final thing for you, John. What is your biggest spring storyline that you're going to follow here for Tennessee football?
Ooh, I'm curious what the running back room looks like by the time spring game comes around. I'm curious who running back one is. I'm sure it's a running back by committee, but what does that look like? And then obviously the offensive line, there's going to be faces on there that I have, some of them I have no idea anything about them. So I'm excited for that. Also, what does Jermod McCoy's rehab look like? All signs are promising that he'll be back for 2025. Obviously, he will not be playing in the spring game. Brew McCoy is kind of, I guess, the comparison. Brew is the comparison that you find there, because last year during the spring game you saw him and he looked really promising towards coming back for 25. What does Jermod look like in the stadium on that day in terms of getting back for week one? I know that was. Thank you for trying to save me. Good point. But fortunately, I didn't need saving there. Almost did. No, there's a ton of it. And also, side note, I never got to experience a true spring game because my first one was with like 73 people in the stands because of construction. So that's the other thing I'm excited about, is getting to experience an actual spring game.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's just the offense is going to look completely different. Like, the defense is it's going to be a lot of familiar faces, even without Jermod McCoy. Like, Jalen McMurray's back, Ricky Gibson's back, Caleb Beasley. We'll see if he takes a step, and he's in the mix there, former 4-star. He like you.
And the other thing, and you kind of mentioned it. Look, last year, that defense, everyone went to the portal. Yeah. Everyone went. And they came back with the best defense since 98.
Yeah.
So who knows?
Again, but that was a bet on their internal guys, right? Like that was what, exactly. Like it's that same bet that they're doing on offense that they did on defense last year.
Yep.
And I don't know. It's just so funny that we're in year 5 of Heupel, and the biggest concern about like whether or not Tennessee is going to get to that next level is the offense. Like the defense is going to be there. I have no worries about the defense and where they're at right now. Defense can be really good again next year. Well, the offense has to be a lot better.
Jacob Warren said it on a podcast that, there's just more people running that offense. There's more people who know about that offense. It's not this, secret anymore. The scout is much easier. So now how do you adjust to it? And what I thought was crazy is the last 2 years, everyone's complained about the tempo. Where's the tempo? Where's the tempo? And they were still top 5 in tempo. Which is like wild to think how fast that offense really can be when they get it going. Hopefully they get to that point again next year. We saw it, against Chattanooga and Kent State, at times Vanderbilt. I'm excited to see what things look like in the spring and in the spring game, because that's going to be there's a lot of questions that are going to be answered that day for sure. And there's some that are going to be answered incorrectly at the end of the day, because by the time the fall comes around, it's going to look completely different too. So that'll be intriguing.
I just want to hear like behind the scenes, like who's doing well and who's not. Because I think the competition on the offensive side of the ball and like hearing which young guys are actually making the league. Because like I think we'll know, you and I will hear some stuff and you're like, uh-oh. Like, or it will be awesome. Like, all right, this is good. A lot of guys are turning the quarter. But I mean, Tennessee just has to have, there's no way around it. Like they have to have their young blue chippers make the league. Like there's so many that have to. Mike Matthews has to be worth it. Nico Iamaleava has to be worth it. And he was good from the second half of the Alabama game on. But like David Sanders has to be good right away. Lance Hurd has to figure it out. He had a rough first year at left tackle protecting Nico's blind side. Satterwhite or Anderson have to run with the center spot and not miss a beat from Cooper. Like it's just a lot of guys who are super talented guys coming out of high school, but they haven't had this kind of just open path to stardom at Tennessee. But it's all right there for the taking for all these guys.
Yeah, and look, everybody talks about it with quarterbacks. Oh, he had such a good guy to learn from. But nobody talks about it with other positions. Nobody's like, oh, well, left guard had such a good left guard to learn from. These guys had a lot of good guys to learn from. Guys who Josh Heupel absolutely adored. Like, he loved that senior class. So that's another storyline to follow. This is the first time that Josh Heupel doesn't have Brew McCoy, Cooper Mays, these guys who helped him through being at Tennessee throughout a really tough first couple of years with the sanctions, and they built this thing. So now you got to find those guys in your locker room all over again.
Yeah, who's the leader on this team? Like, I have no idea who is the leader on offense. Like, there's some guys on defense like Bryson Easton who obviously pop, but I don't know who the offensive leader is, because I don't know if it's gonna be Nico. Is he gonna take that step, being the boisterous, just kind of guy that Hendon was? And I don't know. It may be, but Sampson was that guy for them this past year. Sampson and Brew, and they're gone, and Cooper too. Those guys are all gone. To your point, like someone's gonna have to step up in the leadership role.
Yeah, for sure. And I think Nico can do it. It may look a little bit different than what people want to see. Yeah. It may look a little bit different than what Dylan did in, leading huddles the way that he did. But I think Nico commands a lot of respect and a lot of attention. And when he talks, people listen. And I'd place it on him right now. And I think people are willing to follow that. So I'm excited to see what Nico can do next year.
John, what can the good folks check out from you and the team over at WVLT this week?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter and Facebook, John Sartori TV. You can give us a follow on Twitter at WVLT Sports. We have fun over there. Post memes every now and then. And then, we got a lot of cool stuff. Tony Vitello was in studio this week. Baseball's right around the corner. Our Rick Russo, the king of East Tennessee sports, he has an interview with Tony V coming up this week. A lot of really cool stuff. Look, at the end of the day, just appreciate anybody checking anything out that we do. It means the world. So yeah, for everyone that's listening that does know me, thank you so much for welcoming me to East Tennessee. If you don't, come check us out. We're having a good time at VLT, so appreciate y'all.
Love it. Go check them out today, WVLT Sports, and all the good stuff that John and Rick are doing on that. John,
also want to give a shout out Riley Robinson. She just joined us about 4 months ago now, so she's over there too. So she's doing a great job too. So yeah, all three of us, give us a check out or don't. That's fine, but appreciate you anyway.
No, this is positive. No, do check them out, John. Go check out the awesome team over there at
Glass
WVLT.
half full, Chase. I love it.
I love it. John, thank you so much for the time, and we'll have to check back in again soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you, man.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.